So again, like Nani said, we're going to be talking about lithium-ion batteries. I'm going to talk about the use of lithium-ion batteries, what their abilities are, what their limitations are, how they're made, and then some of the ways that they go into what we call thermal runaway or become a fire hazard. And then Mikiala is going to talk about what you can do in the home and things that you can do to make sure that lithium-ion batteries aren't an issue for you in your home, that you have a safe way of dealing with them. So I'm just going to get started right off. With the growing use of lithium-ion batteries, there's a lot of good that they do. Just in the short time that they've been used as widely as they have, the voltage and capacity has gone up on them. So you can do bigger projects. They last a lot longer. Their energy density is great, so you can provide torque or uses that a lot of the earlier lithium-ion batteries just didn't have the ability to do. They've got a longer life cycle than historically ever. There's a lot of different applications you can use them in. We'll talk about a few of those very quickly. And their performance is great. They do what we want them to do and have helped us become a unplugged world. Think about all you do on your smartphone, and if you didn't have a lithium-ion battery in your smart device, you'd be tethered to an outlet. And the whole thing about the world is globalizing and moving forward in a very efficient way. The thing with lithium-ion batteries, while they have all those attributes and great things that help us, there's also some unique hazards that are inherent to them. One of them is the electric shock hazard. We'll talk about fire hazard with that, and then the toxic gas generation when the components of these go into thermal runaway and begin to burn. There's some nasty, nasty stuff that comes off there. And we won't really go into depth about that, but just know that's what we're talking about when we talk about some of the hazards that come with lithium-ion batteries. And then there is the potential for stranded energy. No matter how long the battery's been not used, discharged, there's always going to be, especially in like electric vehicles, there's always going to be some stranded energy in there. There's really no real way to get that energy completely purged from the energy cell, the battery cell itself. So let's talk a little bit about lithium-ion batteries. Again, we see them in our consumer electronics, smart devices, mobile phones, all of that. We use them in micromobility devices. If you go to Honolulu, you can see e-bikes and e-scooters all over the place getting charged. All of them are using a variant of a lithium-ion battery. And then electric vehicles, I applaud Hawaii. When I go there for work, I see so many EVs driving around with the EV plates and stuff. So that's great that they're being used, but just know we're using this technology on such a large scale when we step into electric vehicles or battery energy storage systems, which some of you might be installing in your homes to supplement your either wind or photovoltaic solar power. No matter what device you're using, no matter what you've got, this is what the lithium ion battery is going to look like for you. All things that have a lithium ion battery, this is the same components you're going to see. I won't dive too much into it, but as you can see on the top there, there's a positive lead and then a positive electrode that goes through there. And then in the body of it, not on the bottom or the top, but in the body of that, you see the negative electrode and what you see there that's on the screen, it's the little gray pieces of waving paper. That's called a separator. And that separator is 0.0003 inches to 0.00001 inches wide. So it's not very thick. And when we see a failure event in a battery, it's usually because that separator has become compromised. And what that means is that either by crushing, overheating, things like that, that we'll talk about in just a couple slides, that separator becomes compromised, and then you get an unchecked flow of positive and negative ions rushing across that barrier, and that creates a tremendous amount of heat. And once that heat starts to get to the point where the actual battery cylinder itself can't contain it, then you see it start to bulge, rupture. You usually see like white smoke come jetting out of it, almost like a firework. And all of that tells you that individual cell is about ready to go into thermal runaway. And then as it goes into thermal runaway, it can heat up the cells adjacent or next to it. And then the domino effect happens. But as the more cells get involved, the faster those dominoes fall, and it grows at what we call an exponential rate. But that individual cell that you saw in the previous slide, that's what you see in everything that you have with lithium-ion batteries. But those little individual cells can be transferred to a pouch or into a battery cell itself. The individual battery cells can then go in. And as you can see here, you've got some smaller ones on the right-hand side of the photo. Those are like the size that you'd see in a smartphone. The ones on the far left-hand side is ones that you would see in like a laptop computer, a tablet, some sort of device like that that's portable. And then the round ones that you see stacked in the middle, they group those together. The individual cells then are grouped together, and they just put however many they need to power. When they calculate how much power they need, they just drop that many cells into a pack, and then they may have multiple packs. An electric vehicle will have hundreds of these individual round cells like you see in the middle of the photo there, and they'll be then put into bundles, and then there could be dozens of those large bundles in the bottom of an electric vehicle. But it all starts from the ground up in these individual cells or pouches that you see. Again, we see them in cell phones, laptops, power tools, especially like lawn mowers, leaf blowers, all of those things that people use for landscaping for their homes. Now we're seeing, because the voltage and the power capacity of these is so much better, we're seeing a lot more of them being used in the consumer or our home power tools, but also on the industrial scale. And in fact, something you guys don't have to worry about in Hawaii, but I'm all happy because I just got a lithium-ion battery-powered snow thrower. So when winter hits in Montana, I'm going to be able to move snow and not have to deal with gas and oil and all that. So we're seeing them in large-scale power tools. And everything that you run around your house, your frothers for your coffee, all of those are on lithium-ion batteries. And then, of course, we've got the micromobility devices, which are the e-bikes, the e-scooters, the hoverboards. All of those have their own benefits, but they also are unique in that they're subject to external damage, hopping off a curb, getting hit, getting dropped, and then that event can then trigger the thermal runaway that we talked about in just a few slides ago. Then we get into the large scale lithium-ion batteries. We're talking about hybrid vehicles, golf carts, fully electric vehicles, and then, of course, energy storage systems like the commercial size that you see at all the solar farms sitting out in the fields, and then in the residential setting where somebody might have a wall pack in their garage or in their home to power their home to supplement their photovoltaic or wind generators. And to talk about the scale of what we've got, if you look at your smartphone, no matter who makes it, they've got about 7 watt-hours worth of power stored inside of them. And then when you go up to the laptop, you've got about 7 times more power at 45. Power drills, they're 90, but up to over 150 watt-hours are available. And then like you see on that electric scooter, it's 300 watt-hours. And then when you start getting into like wall packs, and I won't break this down too much, or an electric vehicle, those are kilowatt hours. So that electric scooter that you saw on the previous slide at 300 watt hours, that would be 0.3 kilowatt hours. So it would be at the very bottom of the left hand of the graph there, showing you how much power it is. But when you get up into like electric vehicles, now you've got 62 kilowatt hours, which is a tremendous amount of energy. And especially if it's stranded or stored in those individual cells after something happens to them. So there is a difference. I remember when Energizer came out with their lithium batteries, but those were a primary battery, which meant they were disposable. And they didn't have the lithium-ion salts in them. They had a lithium metal in them. And these were not rechargeable. These were ones that you got. They supposedly lasted longer than your alkaline batteries, but they were still single use and you had to dispose of them properly. The lithium ion itself is actually a lithium salt that then is a secondary battery, which you can then charge over and over for the life cycle of the battery. And it's used salts. It is flammable. The lithium ion salt is flammable, but only under certain circumstances. And again, once this battery goes into thermal runaway, it's going to produce flammable gases and toxic gases that could impair the person if they're in the environment, like in their apartment charging their e-bike or something, and that starts to off gas that those toxic gases could easily overcome someone. And then the gases that are being put on off are also flammable. So if they get to the ignition source, then you can have a flash fire inside your apartment, your garage, wherever you're storing and charging these batteries. But again, they are rechargeable, so you can use them over and over and not fill our landfills or our recycling places with lithium metal batteries. The thermal abuse is one of the failure modes that you're going to see when you encounter a thermal runaway, or if a battery goes into failure mode. And that's like putting your cell phone on the dashboard of your car on a hot day. Overcharging your battery and then undercharging or discharging it really quickly and then charging it right away. All of those processes create heat. And if that heat becomes too extreme because it can't get out from the body of where all the battery cells are packaged together, then they're going to start heating each other up. And that's kind of that rapid growth that you see once thermal runaway goes. So that's the thermal abuse. Then the mechanical abuse is the battery is actually physically compromised. It gets dropped, crushed, something pokes through it. If you see on some planes, they'll make an announcement that if you drop your cell phone in the seat, don't put your seat up or back. Get a hold of a flight attendant so that they can get it out for you. Because if you move the seat while your battery or the cell phone's there, that seat moving mechanism could damage the battery and cause it to go into thermal runaway on the airplane, which is, not a good place if you're going to have a fire. And all airlines now have battery containment bags that the flight attendants know how to use in case somebody's phone on a flight goes into thermal runaway. And that previous little GIF that you saw, that was just a battery pack that was sitting on the ground that they ran over with a forklift to show you that just damaging that, how quickly, once that separator is compromised, how quickly that goes into thermal runaway. And again, we're talking about electrical abuse, overcharging, charging too rapidly, not using the appropriate charging block. You're using something that's rated way higher in energy transfer than what the device you're charging can handle. If you discharge it too rapidly, monkey with it on the interior and then discharge it too rapidly, you can also get some heat generation that then goes into a failure mode. And then if you've got, aftermarket things that you're adding or poorly constructed, cheap lithium-ion battery products, you can see usually they get caught and red flagged and pulled from the shelves, but you might still see some of that stuff out there. And then again, environmental impacts, seismic activity for electric vehicles. You could have rodents chewing on the wiring, extreme heat, again, that causes thermal runaway. So in places like Arizona, Southern California, where they can get some extreme dry heat, you might see that. And then any kind of flooding, especially salt water, seems to compromise those batteries pretty quickly. But what you see as the dominoes fall is you have some sort of initiation event, and that's something that causes the battery to fail, like what we talked about in the previous slides. Then a short circuit inside there causes the heat to rise very quickly, and then they start creating in their own heat. And then the cells sitting next to them, as you can see in the bottom pack with all those purple cylinders, each one of those is a cell, and then they're all packed together next to one another. And when one starts to heat up, the rest of them start to heat up, and you get that rapid rise. And then you have the failure event. So now I'd like to turn it over to Michaela so that she can talk about what you can do to make your home safer and how to use these more safely.
Thanks, Gary.
Aloha mai kako. I'm Mikiala. I'm with the Honolulu Fire Department's Community Relations and Education section. It's been an honor and privilege to also serve as the state's representative at NFPA on the Public Education Network. So to bring this all back to home and how these lithium-ion batteries are impacting us here in Hawaii, in our individual homes and within our community, I'm going to review a few safety tips that can help us be mindful of all the products that we have. I mean, like he's shown from our phones and cell phones, phones and smartwatches to some of the micro mobility devices like e-scooters and e-bikes that are kind of popular these days. So the first important thing to remember and safety tip that we're advocating with this year's Fire Prevention Week theme is to buy listed products. How many of you guys are aware of like the UL symbol when you look for electronic devices or even charging cables and power strips? Well, that is just one of the certified or nationally recognized testing laboratories. And there are others that are valid and approved. So if you want to visit like OSHA.gov, OSHA.gov, and learn more about nationally recognized testing laboratories and their current list of approved labs, those are the kinds of icons and labels you want to look for when you're purchasing a product. A question came up with a colleague of mine who, when we were at the conference, the NFPA conference in June, we were talking about how we all packed our electronic toothbrushes, and something as small as that may not be as extreme of a hazard or seem like it, but those are all rechargeable items as well. So it's good to be mindful of how you of the items you purchase and how you use them, as he mentioned in his presentation. Aside from using them safely on the day-to-day, for example, people who use the external battery packs when we travel or we're going to and from work or other places where we're not plugging directly into the wall, it's important to charge those things on a well-ventilated area on a flat surface. We definitely discourage folks from getting home from work, plugging in their phone and throwing it on the couch or on their bed where it can get hot and then actually start a fire. Our investigators have responded to incidents where the fire started like in the bedroom under the pillow because the cell phone was like charging under the pillow. So to be mindful of how you use it, but also when talking about charging, as mentioned before, the charging device, the cord, the block that goes into the wall should also be certified and listed, come from the vendor or manufacturer or approved. Like if you get a third party charging cable, as an example, like iPhones, there are all kinds of iPhone chargers, but as long as you get one that has the appropriate, like Apple approved logos on them and you use it in a safe space, you should be good to go. But we definitely encourage charging devices safely and remembering to unplug them once they hit 100%. The third and last step of that we highlighting in this year's theme is to recycle these batteries responsibly. Many of us disregard the little trash can symbol with the line strike through it and toss things in our trash just because it's easier. It does take a little bit more work to find and return them to a place that can actually recycle it, especially here in Hawaii where we don't have a major plant that can process them properly, take them apart and distribute the different parts and minerals. So it tends to have to get shipped out again away from Hawaii. But it's important that we take that time to malama our aina as well as our home environments because, as he said, the toxicity in the event they catch on fire and the thermal runaway not only impacts us at home, but if we think about those who work in our refuse divisions. Here in Honolulu, we're fortunate to have rubbish pickup, but even if, like on the other islands, if you drop your rubbish off at the waste station, our ohana who work there are working in these environments where everything's getting pushed around with big trucks or getting buried and all these things, and we're putting their lives at risk as well. So it's important to recycle them. And with that, how do we find the right place to send them? There is a national partner that is got a list of locations that are approved or doing this already. So it's calltorecycle.org. It's not a comprehensive list. I've looked at it for Hawaii and it's kind of minimal. However, after talking stories with some of the contacts through there, they do recommend going to some of the big box stores. For example, if you buy power tools from Home, Home Depot or Lowe's, a lot of those stores also have a recycling program at the stores. So you may need to just take it back to one of those places. Um, I know that in Honolulu, the Environmental Services Department has a household hazardous waste location drop-off list. And so if you go to honolulu.gov/ENV, you can find that list there. And hopefully the other counties have a similar um, listing as well of where they can drop it off. Um, that is all on the recycling. So this year's theme related to lithium ion battery safety, the 3 easy steps, just to recap, is to buy listed products from a certified laboratory, charge devices safely, and recycle batteries responsibly. If you guys have any questions, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Michaela, and thank you, Gary. And I'm honestly just so happy that you got to pop in to our meeting to meet all of our resident leaders. So thank you, and you're always welcome to join us. I'm assuming we're going to have some questions, so I wanted to open it up. But first, do you guys have resources like written products that we can share with communities, or specific websites that we should send people to?
Sure. You can go to either nfpa.org/fire prevention week or just fpw.org. And that will tell you about everything on the theme for lithium ion batteries. It'll give you, and then there's even things that you can print out with the NFPA logo on them and then hand out at group events or things like that. And those are free resources. And then those other in the FPW, there will be links in there to go to talk about ready for EVs and a lot of different things that are other landing pages where you can get more information. But the centralized one is really nice, just fpw.org.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're
Okay,
welcome.
I think I'm going to open it up to any questions or thoughts or feedback that you guys have for Michaela or Gary. And don't be shy, or you can use the chat box if you don't want to come off mute.
I have a
Yeah.
question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Go.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think E-Waste Hawaii, do they do batteries as well as computers and other things like that?
I am looking it up as we speak. I know that is one that had been one source that we had used before. Something that I just want to share and what we've learned recently as we were trying to make it easier for our communities to know where to go. Of course, we can't endorse any particular vendor or business. There are some vendors who do it for free, and there are some vendors who do it for a charge. So I encourage you to definitely take a look at some of those additional resources, and look to see if and how they receive it. And there are some limitations by some vendors. With our Family Day, Fire Prevention Week Family Day, we hosted at the zoo on October 4th. We did have a partner collecting e-waste as part of our event. However, there were restrictions. So it was, like from cell phones to computer monitors and TV monitors. But some of the bigger products, they weren't accepting at that drive. You sometimes have to go to their facility directly. So it's really hard for me to narrow it down specifically with an exact list, but those are some of the things to keep in mind as you look at some of these other locations.
Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and have Jan come off mute, and then Eric, you'll be next.
Hello. So my husband is a big fan of power tools and batteries. So he has a shelf set up where he has all of his batteries and then he has the chargers. And normally when he uses a power tool, he'll, when he's done with it, he'll charge it till it's full and then take it off the charger and let it rest on the shelf. Is that safe? Or can the charged batteries that he has sitting on the side still be compromised?
That's a really good question. I'll field that, Michaela. So two things. One, you want to make sure that you wait a little while from the time you discharge a lithium-ion battery until you charge it again, because discharging the battery creates heat. So if you're mowing your lawn or doing something with a power tool and you run the battery out and then you turn right around and throw it on the charger, it didn't have time to dissipate the heat that was from using it, and now you're charging it, which creates heat, and now you've got more heat that can cause it to go into thermal runaway. So it sounds like the setup's good, but just have your husband wait a half hour, 45 minutes between the time that battery's been used until you throw it on the charger. That should give you enough time for it to cool and not compromise that very thin plastic separator, melt that inside. The one thing is if the storage of your batteries, if they're out where they can be out in the heat, direct sunlight or something like that, light coming through a window, or the temperature inside the storage shed or out next to the garage is really high, then you can get that thermal abuse from the heat just from the sun beating down on it. So make sure that they're in where they can't get overheated from that. And then again, wait for a certain amount of time from the time you finish using a battery before you throw it on the charger.
And is it safe to, I guess it would be safe to periodically just check these batteries, even though they're sitting and, it's already charged, just to check if there's heat there?
Check for what? I'm sorry?
If there is heat there. So
Yeah, and you should, if you're not using it or charging it, there shouldn't be any heat generated. So if you have a battery that starts puffing or jetting white smoke or bulging, or it's really hot even though it's just been sitting on a shelf, that battery is gonna fail. There's something wrong with it internally, and that's probably more of a manufacturing defect than thermal abuse or what your husband's doing with it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Eric.
So we, both of our cars are EVs, and one thing I was wondering, because a lot of times you'll have a fire extinguisher in your car that you just carry around just in case you have an issue.
Uh-huh.
But obviously lithium-ion fires are a whole different kettle of fish. Is there a useful consumer level fire extinguisher that's worth carrying around, or is that more of a fire department level reaction?
That's an excellent question. So the only thing that we found through full-scale testing is that copious amounts of water, I mean hundreds and hundreds of gallons of water, need to be used to extinguish a fire. So a dry chemical extinguisher, any of those, one, they're not going to be the appropriate medium to try and put that fire out. And two, you wouldn't have the capacity of a portable fire extinguisher or something like that to be able to know that you're actually putting the fire out, that you can feel secure that the fire is out. So really what we found in full scale testing is just dump water on it until it's really, done, there's no flames and it's cooled, and then stand by with more water ready because it could easily reignite from either that stranded energy or other factors inside the battery. So to answer your question in the short way, no, I don't know of any extinguisher that would be effective for EVs that you could carry in the vehicle. And it's just a matter of, fire department being able to get there and flow a lot of water to put it out.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and just to add on to that real quick, it's as quickly as the technology is emerging and coming out, the standards and the compliance and things are still catching up to a lot of it. So that applies to the first response protocols. There were other recommendations early on how to address these kinds of fires, and now we're learning those aren't necessarily the best tactics. So being mindful of that, we're going to, like he said, use a lot of water, because that is currently the best solution. One thing that we do share with community members who ask similar related questions is if your exit from whatever space may be impacted by flames and you had a fire extinguisher, to get out of that place and to be safe, you could potentially use it to knock it down for you to get out of there, but it really won't last and take care of it altogether. Those fire extinguishers, typically that size is only for a wastebasket size fire, and that's of, paper or something like that. And so just to be mindful of those types of products that claim to do one thing, but it may not be at the scale at which you're actually thinking about applying it to. So be very mindful and cautious of.
And regardless of that, make sure that you don't get inside the vapor cloud, the smoke cloud, because again, some of those gases, you can take one breath and it'll drop you right where you stand. So you want to just make sure you're out of that smoke plume or those vapor areas.
Gordon.
Yes. How does that go for like your phone device if that starts smoking, or if you have a tool and it starts smoking, is it best just to drop it and get water on it, or put it in a bucket of water? What's the
Yeah.
way to handle that?
The fire department in New York's recommendation is to either submerge it, if it fits in a bathtub or a sink, submerge it in water in there. And then the fire department does a process called overpacking, where they use like kitty litter gravel to pack it in metal container, non-combustible, and then dispose of it. But you're very right. If it's your laptop or your phone, getting it completely submerged in a bathtub or a large sink or something like that is the only way to really keep it from multiple fires. And know that when those individual cells burst, they may project out up to 100 feet away from the fuel package. So not so much in your cell phone, but if you have multiple cells of batteries and those packs catch on fire, you can have those individual cells eject and become a projectile that can land 75 to 100 feet away. But on a power tool or your phone or something like that, they're not to that scale. So throwing them in water will instantly start to cool them, and then you can get the fire department there to help.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? I see Jan, you have a question?
Does the charging also apply to like your phone? Like when I talked earlier about the power tools and the batteries for my husband's power tools. How do you do that? How do you cool off? Like say for instance, my phone is at like 10%. And then I just put it back on the charger. Is that the same with like the power tools? How would you cool it off?
If it's in thermal runaway, the only way to do it is to submerge it in water. But if it's just hot to you, Michaela's advice about not charging it on a couch or a pillow or in your bed, making sure it's on a hard surface that can dissipate or pull that heat away so it doesn't stay in the battery cell area. So make sure that it's there, that's the only advice you can really have, especially for the real small devices like phones. Make sure you're not charging them on your bed linens or on your pillows, on the couch cushions, that they have to be on a hard surface that then can take that heat away if it starts to build up while it's charging.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. It should also be in a well-ventilated area and not, like you said, by direct sunlight. So if you've got a coffee table or an end table near to a window that's getting the afternoon sun and you want to charge your phone, we'd recommend maybe putting it in like on the kitchen counter instead, so that it's not getting hit with the extra heat from the sun.
Okay, mahalo.
I mean, I feel like everything I'm doing wrong. How frequent or are you guys noticing fires more and more because of lithium-ion batteries?
Yes, most definitely. And what we're hearing is from the fire departments themselves, and then we do research for full scale through the Fire Protection Research Foundation to find out the scope of that and what we can do to make it safer at that point.
Michaela, what about Honolulu Fire Department? What are you guys noticing?
I'm actually working on a presentation right now. As far as EV fires, while the number of fires is very low, the risk is extremely high. And so we have experienced or responded to just a few here in Honolulu as far as EVs go. And then it's when it comes to the home residential types of fires, like I said, I have photos from investigators where it was like on the bed or even someone's massage gun, like it just was plugged in and it caught fire, things like that. But I don't have an exact number for you folks. I can say though that because of this high risk, there are a number of residential multi-residential locations like apartment complexes and condos, things like that, that actually restrict certain vehicles from parking in the structure, or even storing of bikes, the e-bikes. And so it's kind of a very challenging conversation right now because again, there's a lot of benefits to it. Environmentally, but then there's also a lot of challenges for functionality and practicality for the people who use it. So I actually have a coworker, a firefighter on my team who has an e-bike, but their apartment has a specific outdoor space where they can secure those bikes, but even the charging of it, he's got to charge his battery elsewhere. So he'll only charge it when he's home and he's around and can do it in a safe space. And then he'll put it back on his bike and store it in the proper storing area. But I am looking for a YouTube video that we usually share in our general presentations, fire safety presentations, that shows, from e-cigarettes and cell phones to like the big storage facilities of those batteries, just so that it has a really good description of how and what these things are and the improper use. A lot of it comes down to the human improper use of things because, we don't like to read the manufacturer's guidelines with like the itty bitty size 8 font, but those are really important instructions to have and look into. So I'll share that as soon as I find it.
Okay, yeah, such good info. I learned a ton. And for everybody else here, what we can do is put together the slide deck that Gary shared. We'll pull up the resources from the NFPA website. We'll package it all up for you guys so that you have the start of, sort of a resource kit for you. And Jan, I see your hand up.
I'm sorry, everyone. I have to go to the airport to catch a flight. I
Thank you,
appreciate
Gary.
Yeah, you're all welcome. And thank you very much. Hope to see you on the islands.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gary.
Okay, I have two questions.
Okay.
So the first question is, I see a lot of Wi-Fi towers either popping up like looking like trees or they're attached to tall buildings. Do those have the same process of these ion batteries? That's question number one. And then number two, there was a mention of the solar farms and they also have these batteries. Are there any required safety measures that the solar farms have to follow? Because I kind of see it like if any of those batteries were to explode, that toxic gases can move through the air if it's on a windy day. And so that's kind of scary for me.
I can't speak to the details. That's a little bit outside of my specific role. However, I know that building codes, fire codes, and things like that are supposed to be followed and enforced for those kinds of places. There are protocols in place, just like our fire department has our standard operating guidelines to respond to those types of fires. Some of those facilities or big locations do have a similar fire plan to address it as soon as it's happening, of course, after they call 911, and so that we can respond as well. But I'm not privy to those specific details. I think more accurately, HECO or one of the electric companies that contract those out or facilitate the actual power being generated and stored and sent out can better answer that question for you. But that is a very valid question and concern. I think in regards to the smoke and the toxic gases that are released, when it's in a well-ventilated area, it's obviously a little bit less hazardous to the individual person than if you were in an apartment unit, for example, with a e-bike plugged in or even a laptop plugged in that begins to catch on fire and have thermal runaway. That immediate vicinity definitely is like get outside as soon as possible because it's not worth risking one breath.
Mahalo.
Mikiela, if you don't, I'm going to ask you, do you have availability for the next 30 minutes? This is what I'm thinking, because we only have 35 minutes left of this meeting. We're going to do breakouts. And what if you stayed in the main room, and those that have additional questions, they can just stay back with you and have some of their questions answered. What do you guys think about that? That way we don't take up, this is such important stuff, and I want to address all your questions. I'm just worried about the timing. Okay, I got some thumbs up. So
And I'm available. I can stand by in the main room.
perfect. Thank you, Mikiela. Okay, you guys, so we're going to move on. We have two more things we want to cover before we call it a day. That is, we want to give you some quick updates from Hawaii Wildfire, and then we're going to put you in breakouts with your respective Firewise coordinators to